Mr. Kennedy, I listened with great interest. You said you had about 25 years' experience. Am I correct in that? And how long have you worked for NOAA?
About 21 years.
Okay. So let me just read a little bit of your testimony again. And let me tell you where I'm going with this. I appreciate the fact that everybody's working so hard on this. I appreciate the fact that everybody worked so hard after Valdez. I appreciate the work we do always afterwards. But I need to know, my constituents need to know, Americans need to know why we're always on the job afterwards. What happened between Valdez and now? What was NOAA doing? What were these conversations about? Why could we be in this mess right now? The more we learn about this, the more disgraceful it is. When you're talking about saying, don't worry, oil companies in charge. This is of great concern because I thought NOAA was in charge of our coastline and protecting our assets, and I thought other federal agencies were in charge. I thought MMS was supposed to be in charge. So I'm trying to look back because otherwise we're going to sit here again. I don't know if it's a year, 5 years, 10 years. We'll be sitting here again and we'll be talking about my personal favorite phrase, lessons learned. Whatever that means, lessons learned. So please let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, you said that NOAA is a natural resource trustee and that's responsible for protecting, assessing, and restoring. Well, if it's a natural resource trustee, and you said that you were at hearings, I don't know if NOAA held them or you just attended international oil spill conferences, what did you talk about? Did anybody ever say, let me add this, did anybody say, like when my boy was 10 years old, he and his friends would get together in a room and imagine the worst thing that could happen? Did you ever talk about the worst thing that could happen?
I think we did. Let me just back up and say that Exxon Valdez, we had the same sort of indignation in hearings that I was involved with then that really resulted in the Oil Pollution Act. The Oil Pollution Act has a title, a research title, Section 7. Meetings were held across all of the federal, state, and local academia to talk about what that plan should look like, a research plan. It was developed. We can go back and show you that plan. For the most part, the investment that would be required to follow through with that, from lessons learned, never occurred, as far as I know. Did NOAA and a few others go out and try and do what we could with the resources that we had? We've done long-term studies as a result of the Exxon Valdez, not only looking at cleanup methodologies that worked and didn't work. We actually, during that spill, got federal, state, and local entities to allow us to leave some areas unclean so that we could go back and look. So we've done a variety of things, including as we saw more and more dollars dry up across the rest of the federal agency and industry. There was something called the Marine Spill Response Corporation, developed by industry. After Exxon Valdez, this was a nationwide effort, $60 to $70 million a year in research and development to look at these kinds of things. That lasted for 3 or 4 years, and it dried up. We looked at American Petroleum Institute that had money for research. It went away. So what happened, at least in NOAA's case, is we developed a partnership with the University of New Hampshire and developed a small research unit.
And they didn't get money. They haven't received money since 2007. For their coastal cleanup.
Correct.
So let me pull us back into focus again. Mm-hmm. You said it went away. Under which administration? And was there any protest? It's not good enough to say the money went away. I feel that if you knew and feared this, and others in your job and in these agencies feared that this could happen, I think the response should have been a lot larger than it was. I hear your frustration, and I'm glad that you did reports. But I think if the average American had known, and I think it's the job of federal agencies to be those bulldogs for us, and had stood up there and said, hey, guess what? They're putting leases out there. We have no idea what to do. And we just thought that the American public needs to know that. It needed to be a very, very public challenge. What we're uncovering right now is astounding, absolutely astounding. And I'm just wondering, were the agencies, the federal agencies that were involved in protecting and assessing, were they ever invited to the table to talk to the oil industry? When we had a previous administration developing oil policy, were federal agencies involved, or was it all just the oil company making their own decisions, running everything, and telling agencies like yours that, don't worry, we've got it under control? Because if we don't get more aggressive, and if we don't take on the role of guardian, then we will fall victim to this again and again and again. So when you had that oil spill conference, was that a central topic, that this could happen? And were there federal agencies there saying, we don't know what to do? We've had several hearings now, and the general consensus is that we didn't know enough of what we were doing. We didn't know the impact on the oil. We don't know if this would actually have a blowout. We wouldn't know how to stop it. It's unbelievable what we didn't know. And I talk about the arrogance of moving forward when we don't know this. And now here we are. So at the International Oil Spill Conference, can you tell me who attended?
It is a cross-section of everybody, from industry to all the federal agencies to state to academia. It represents anyone that has an interest or an investment or academic research.
Okay, so in the very basic, simple terms, did any of you walk up to any of the guys from the oil industry and say, hey, do you know how to cap a well?
I don't recall asking that specific question, but it is a forum to get people together to say what is the state of the state and what else needs to be done.
Well, yeah, but here's the question, okay? You may talk about oil spills, but did anybody with the oil companies sitting right next to you, right? You're all there together. Did anybody say, does anybody know what to do if we have a problem like this in the Gulf? Was it ever, did you ever have a tabletop model exercise?
I cannot recall that. Does that mean it didn't exist or didn't get asked that way? Maybe, but I certainly wasn't involved in that and I can't recall it.
This seems to me to be the very first question when you start talking about oil spills. Not what do we do and how will we do the science, but how do we prevent it? And so far, I'm bitterly disappointed that I haven't heard anybody say that we stood up to the oil companies and said, you know what, I don't think you guys know what you're doing yet. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady from New Hampshire. We have a second round of questions here I've been asked, and I do have a few myself. Dr. McNutt, I have a question for you. This has to do with flow rates. Recognizing that future estimates of